And now we are entering into another month of festivities. And this is the festivity of Gita Jayanti. Especially Srila Prabhupada's disciples would go around the world distributing books and celebrating this occasion. Now, Srila Prabhupada used to say this when sometimes devotees used to do the book distribution. Prabhupada used to quote Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, saying that anyone who has taken birth in the land Bharat Bhumite Haila Manushya Janma, so anyone who has taken birth in the land of India especially, he has got special responsibility. What is that? Janma sardhak kari karo paropakar. So Srila Prabhupada said that in this Vedic knowledge, there is a storehouse of knowledge. There is abundance of knowledge. And if there is a storehouse of knowledge, and Prabhupada quotes another verse to state that if one does not distribute that knowledge, one is known as Vyana Khana. So that means one who is trying to preserve or not distribute that knowledge to others. So Prabhupada states that one should not become like that, but rather one should distribute this knowledge. And as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, one should also janma sardhak kari. So one must learn for oneself, implement these principles, at the same time go out and let others know about this message of the Vedic literatures. So Srila Prabhupada was encouraging devotees, especially in this month, that please go out. Especially Prabhupada, I think he was talking in Los Angeles, I believe. So Prabhupada was telling, especially in places where this knowledge is not at all available, go out and spread this. So Prabhupada was emphasizing the importance of Vedic literatures and how they are the storehouse of knowledge, and how distributing them is so important, and preserving them in a small place is not the right thing to do. So starting with that, now the question may come, what are Vedic literatures, why they are so important, and what is this? What is the relationship of Vedic literatures to Bhagavad Gita, and why Bhagavad Gita is so important? So it is important to note that, as we will see, few aspects from the introduction of Bhagavad Gita and few other aspects from Bhagavad Gita today, and maybe one or two other verses from Bhagavad Gita. So Prabhupada, in the very beginning of introduction, explains that it is the essence of Vedic knowledge. So when Prabhupada is trying to describe Bhagavad Gita in the very beginning, the first statement Prabhupada makes is that Bhagavad Gita is also known as Gita Upanishad. So usually people give more importance to Shruti than Smriti. And however, here Bhagavad Gita is also known as Gita Upanishad. And Prabhupada is also saying that it is the essence of Vedic knowledge and one of the most important Upanishads in Vedic literature. So it is the essence of Vedic knowledge is a very important point to pay attention. So as we were seeing in today's Bhagavatam class also, that Vyasadeva has divided one Veda, the Yajur Veda, into 4, and then he compiled many other literatures supplementing the Vedic literatures so that people can benefit. But as we will see, as we also saw in today's lecture in Bhagavatam class, that people are filled with the modes of passion and ignorance. And therefore, one is occupied with so many other things. One has very little time to read all the Vedic literatures. And further, even more difficult is to understand what is mentioned in all of these Vedic literatures and come towards a conclusive understanding as what is that I'm supposed to do. So this is a very difficult task for a common man to achieve, especially in this age of Kali Yuga, where there is no mode of goodness. As it is said, the important quality that one possesses to appreciate Vedic literature is to have extreme amount of goodness. And when that is missing, it becomes very difficult for one to appreciate what the Vedic knowledge is. Now, in such circumstances, it is very important to recognize that Bhagavad Gita, which is nothing but the words spoken by the Supreme Lord, brings us that the essence of all the Vedic literatures. So this is one very important point we must keep in mind, that Bhagavad Gita is the essence of Vedic knowledge. And therefore, it is even more significant in today's age for us to take to this literature. In fact, Srila Prabhupada made Bhagavad Gita as one of the primary foundational book in ISKCON. As we have seen, there are so many literatures written by the Goswamis. There are so much discussion about Bhakti Rasa. There is so much discussion about the pastimes of Krishna and a lot of other details. There is the commentaries on various aspects of other literatures, Upanishads and other texts. But Srila Prabhupada, and even in fact Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, has made Bhagavad Gita as a primary foundational book. So for all the devotees of Gaudiya Vaishnava. So we take this book very, very seriously. This book is very, very foundational. And it is also important to note that it contains entire essence of the Vedic wisdom. So one must recognize the importance of Bhagavad Gita. That's one very important point. And so in fact, before we go into further more details, what is Bhagavad Gita and how Prabhupada is presenting what is Bhagavad Gita. And we will also look a little bit more into, actually, if one carefully reads this text, these texts contain within it the explanation of what is the text, how one should read the text, and why it is significant also. So within the text, all these descriptions are also given. And therefore, in the introduction also, we'll see in different places, Prabhupada says how one should follow as Arjuna followed in Bhagavad Gita. How one should accept Krishna as described by Arjuna. And so there are various aspects Prabhupada explains that within the text, there is a description about what the text is, how to read the text, and why it is significant. So we will try to see some aspects of those things from within the text. And we should also note that all the various acharyas have glorified Bhagavad Gita and accepted the supremacy of Bhagavad Gita. So be it Shankaracharya, Ramanacharya, Madhvacharya, Nimbarka Swami, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So all the great Vaishnava acharyas, they have given a very important fundamental importance to Bhagavad Gita. So now, maybe before we understand what is Bhagavad Gita, let's just look at little of the context in which this entire text is being spoken. So Bhagavad Gita is a part of Mahabharata, a nectarian part or the essence of Mahabharata, which is compiled by Vyasadeva. So as we know, Mahabharata, the history of greater India. So at that point of time, the entire world is ruled under one king, with the capital being Hastinapura. So in that, there is a certain essence of dialogue that is being spoken between Lord Krishna and Arjuna is described. And this nectar is so valuable and so nice that it is also known by different other names. So in some places it is referred as Krishna Arjuna Samvade, that is the discussion between Krishna and Arjuna. And it is also known as Brahma Vidyayam, that is, it talks about the transcendental knowledge. In some other place, it is also known as Yoga Shastre. So it talks about the science of action, an action which connects one with the Supreme Lord. So we will look into one of these aspects today briefly, as why these names are also given to Bhagavad Gita. So before we go further, I thought I will just briefly discuss about the glorification of Bhagavad Gita as mentioned in Gita Mahatmya. So one. So we'll just briefly try to look at the Gita Mahatmya. These are the words spoken by Adi Shankaracharya glorifying Bhagavad Gita. So, Gita Shastram idam punyam yaha patet prayatah puman Vishnoho padam avapnoti bhaya shokadi varjitaha. So, this first verse of Gita Mahatmya is stating that what happens to one who recites Bhagavad Gita with devotion. So here it is being said that one who, with a regulated mind, recites with devotion this Bhagavad Gita scripture, which is the bestower of all virtue, will attain to a holy abode such as Vaikuntha, the residence of Lord Vishnu, which is always free from mundane qualities based on fear and lamentation. So this words, bhaya shokadi varjitaha. Everyone in the material world is filled with fear of future, the fear of existence. Do I have enough money? What will happen to my children? There is various kinds of fears which have engripped an individual. And shoka is lamentation. One is lamenting, why did this happen? Why am I put in this situation? So many kinds of lamentation each one is having. But no one actually really knows how to free oneself from these two factors of bhaya and shoka. But here, a very simple instruction is being said that with a regulated mind, if one recites with devotion this Bhagavad Gita, so Bhagavad Gita is being described here as the bestower of all virtue, will attain to a holy abode of Vaikuntha. So this is very important principle. These transcendental words, when recited, when heard, and when we read, they have a transcendental effect on us. That, in fact, Prabhupada mentions in another purport in Srimad Bhagavatam, that as soon as one hears these transcendental words, which are filled with potency, immediately the anxiety vanishes. If one hears with attention, then immediately there is no question of anxiety. There is no question of lamentation. There is no question of fear immediately at that point of time. So this is very important to remember, that simply by reciting Srimad Bhagavad Gita, that will be free from bhaya shoka. Gita dhyayana shilasya pranayama parasya cha naiva santihi papani purva janma kritani cha. If one reads Bhagavad Gita very sincerely and with all seriousness, then by the grace of the Lord, the reactions of his past misdeeds will not act upon him. So everyone is afflicted with some sinful reactions that one has done in the past. So because of some sinful acts that one has done in the past, one is suffering various kinds of reactions. And it is very difficult to identify what is the method to overcome each one of the sins. It is not possible to make a certain prayaschitta for each of those activities. But it is being said here, if one reads very sincerely and with all seriousness, then all the past reactions will not act upon him, the reactions of past misdeeds. So, purva janmani kritani cha. So, the misdeeds of the past life will not act upon him. So, first, the fear and lamentation vanishes, and the reactions to sinful acts from the past also vanishes. Maline mochanam pumsam jalasnanam dine dine sakrit gitamrita snanam samsara malanashanam. So we take bath every day so as to purify ourselves from the material dirt that we have in our body. But here it is being said that the samsara mala, that is the dust or the dirt from the material existence, from the material life altogether, how does it go away? How does we understand who am I? What is my real purpose? How do I lead my true life? Because now that is all covered by the impure consciousness of material life. So actually, one can do a lot of things on a material platform and may appear to be slightly higher or lower. But to purify one's consciousness, one cannot do by any material activity. One requires a spiritual process, a spiritual agent, a spiritual means to purify one's material consciousness. And it is being said here that just like we take bath every day to purify ourselves with water, but similarly it is being said even if one takes bath in the sacred Ganges water of Bhagavad Gita, for him the dirt of material life is altogether vanquished. So just to revise again, the first is fear and lamentation, bhaya shokadi varjitaha, and then the sins will not act upon, the sinful reactions of the past deeds will not act. And 3, the dirt of material life will be vanquished for one who cleanses or one who takes bath in the sacred Ganges water of Bhagavad Gita. So then it is said, Gita su Gita kartavya kim anye shastra vistare ya swayam padmanabhasya mukha padmad vinishrita. Because Bhagavad Gita is spoken by the Supreme Lord, one need not read any other Vedic literature. So here, the word that is directly spoken by the Supreme Lord is sufficient enough one to give one the ultimate perfection of life. And because, as we saw, this is the essence of all Vedic literature, if one sincerely, and Prabhupada is mentioning, it is being mentioned here, that one need only attentively and regularly hear and read Bhagavad Gita. But this has to be done attentively and regularly, because there's a lot of dirt in the heart, material dirt. So for this to be purified attentively and regularly, if one does this, then all knowledge that is present in the Vedic literatures will be revealed in the heart of the person who is simply reading this one book, Bhagavad Gita. And then it is being said, Bharatamrita sarvasam Vishnu vakratad vinishritam Gita gangodakam pitva punarjanmana vidyate. By drinking the Ganges waters of the Gita, the divine quintessence of the Mahabharata emanating from the lotus mouth of Lord Vishnu, one will never take rebirth in the material world again. In other words, by devotionally reciting the Gita, the cycle of birth and death is terminated. So, one of the biggest suffering for the living entity is to undergo the cycle of Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi. So, this unavoidable struggle of the living entity in the material world is to take birth, to undergo certain kind of old age, then disease, and then finally the death, which no living entity wants. And no material solution can ever give. Neither this vaccine, neither that policy, neither this government, or neither any family can give one protection from any of these 4 fundamental problems of life. But here it is being said that simply by drinking this divine nectar, which has emanated from the mouth of Lord Vishnu, Krishna, if one just takes this nectar, then that will give immortality, no more rebirth. Sarvo Upanishado Gavo Dogdha Gopalanandanaha Partho Vatsaha Sudhir Bhokta Dugdham Gitamrutam Mahat. So here, Lord Krishna is being compared as Gopalanandanaha, Dogdha Gopalanandanaha, like a cowherd boy or the milker of the cow. And all the Upanishads are being compared to cow. Just like you need to milk the cow, the cow is full of milk. But even then, it requires someone to milk the cow. And further, here it is being said that Partho Vatsa Sudhir Bhokta, Arjuna is the calf. Just like usually the cows tend to give milk more when there is a calf present nearby. So here, Lord Krishna is the milker of the cow, and Arjuna, the calf, is also present there. And then it is being said, Dugdham Gitamritam Mahat. So all the fine theistic intellect people can drink and enjoy this milk. So Lord Krishna is making that essence of all the Vedic literature easily available by milking all the Upanishads. So in fact, it is to be seen that the instructions of scriptures are so important that to understand the essence is very difficult. But here, the Supreme Lord himself is making these things very easily available for all of us. And finally, it is being said, Ekam Shastram Devaki Putra Gitam. Eko Devo Devaki Putra Eva. Eko Mantras Tasya Namani Yani. Karmapi Ekam Tasya Devasya Seva. So this is a very important verse where it is saying, Ekam Shastram Devaki Putra Gitam. There need only one holy scripture, the divine Gita sung by Lord Krishna. So people try to, as we see, Vyavasaya Atmika Buddhi Ekehe Kurunandana. For one who is resolute in the purpose of life, he is very clear of what is to be done. But for one who is irresolute, for him the intellect is many branched. But to simplify things, to avoid unwanted clutter because of the many branched intellect, if one is very, very serious, just the simple one shastram, there need only be one scripture. And what is that? Devaki Putra Gitam, the divine song that is sung by the son of Mother Devaki, that is Lord Krishna. And it is being said, there is only be one God or one worshipable Lord. That is again Devaki Putra, the son of Mother Devaki, Lord Krishna. Eko mantrasya mantrastasya namani yani. And let there be only one mantra. People talk about so many mantras, but this is great Acharya Shankaracharya, whom people think is Mayavada, but he is explaining the glories of the Lord and his holy name. And he's telling, just chant the names of the Lord, holy names of the Lord. And we talk about so many duties that is to be done, and there is being said there is only one duty. Let there be only one duty. What is that? Devotional service unto the Supreme Worshipable Lord, Sri Krishna. So, although people get confused with so many things, actually it is very simple. One should take to one scripture, worshipping one Lord, worshipping or chanting the names of the Lord, holy names of the Lord, and one duty, that is to do devotional service. Now this is giving us everything that we want and more than what we can think of. Freedom from fear, lamentation, freedom from past sinful reactions, then one is cleansed of material dirt, one need not take rebirth, and this one book, one literature is sufficient. So this is very well described by Shankaracharya through his text, this explaining Gita Mahatmya. So Srila Prabhupada uses some of these texts in the introduction of Bhagavad Gita, explaining the significance of Bhagavad Gita, especially towards the end. Prabhupada quotes this verse of how one may cleanse himself daily by taking bath in water, but even if one takes bath in the water of Bhagavad Gita, the sacred Ganges water of Bhagavad Gita, then all material dirt. And further, Prabhupada also uses this, quotes this verse and few other verses to signify the importance of Bhagavad Gita. Now, as we understand, we can clearly see that what is Bhagavad Gita is being described in terms of the purpose of Bhagavad Gita, in terms of the speaker of Bhagavad Gita. So similarly, if you look at Srila Prabhupada's introduction, Prabhupada also defines what is Bhagavad Gita in terms of the purpose of Bhagavad Gita in the beginning, and in various places, Prabhupada often uses the purpose as the means to explain what is Bhagavad Gita. So we'll just try to read this one aspect here. Just what is the Bhagavad Gita? The purpose of Bhagavad Gita is to deliver mankind from the nescience of material existence. Every man is in difficulty in so many ways, as Arjuna also was in difficulty in having to fight the battle of Kurukshetra. Arjuna surrendered unto Sri Krishna, and consequently this Bhagavad Gita was spoken. Not only Arjuna, but every one of us is full of anxieties because of this material existence. Our very existence is in the atmosphere of non-existence. Actually, we are not meant to be threatened by non-existence. Our existence is eternal, but somehow or other we are put into asat. Asat refers to that which does not exist. So, this is a very profound paragraph with so much of meaning. So, the purpose of Bhagavad Gita is to deliver mankind from the nescience of material existence. So, Prabhupada is trying to explain that where is that the person or the living entity is stuck. The living entity is stuck in a certain atmosphere, is surrounded with a certain kind of existence which is not compatible to the living entity. So Prabhupada is mentioning, giving the example of Arjuna, that what was the condition of Arjuna? Arjuna was in difficulty. He was having a dilemma, whether I should engage in this battle or whether I should not engage in this battle. Similarly, each one of us are stuck in various decisions. Whether should I do this, whether should I not do this. Indecision is a common factor that drives every living entity, just like Arjuna is driven here by indecision. Arjuna is a great devotee, as we will see a little further, that how he was considering all the possibilities. Okay, let them take the kingdom, let us be killed by them, will not fight unarmed, or let us go and live as in the forest or do something else by begging. By various means maybe we will live, let them lead the kingdoms. So Arjuna was thinking all possibilities. But still, he could not come towards a conclusive decision as how to overcome this perplexity or the dilemma. So similarly, each one of us are also undergoing various stages of indecision. Various stages, because it is as mentioned in the 3rd chapter, so in 3rd chapter, Prabhupada mentions in text 5, all men are forced to act helplessly according to the impulses born of the modes of material nature. Therefore, no one can refrain from doing something, not even for a moment. So everyone is forced to act. There is no way one cannot remain inactive even for a moment. Now, if everyone is forced to act, naturally the question comes, how should I act? Should I act this way? Should I act that way? Or should I act some other way? And therefore, as we saw in the beginning, this text of Bhagavad Gita is also known as Yoga Shastra. And it is also described as science of action. As how the living entity, the soul, which is always active. This is not a question of the soul being active in the body, material body. No, the soul is always active. So now when there is action which is so imperative, how should one act? And further, this is being described as Yoga Shastra because here the action is not whimsical, but that action which connects one to the Supreme Lord. So this text is teaching one the science of action. Action where one can remain connected with the Supreme Lord. So further, here it is being said that everyone is undergoing some sort of indecision, difficulty, and further, everyone is also in anxiety. about what will happen if I act in this way. There is a fear of the future. There is a fear of consequences, a fear of what people may think, a fear of whether it is right or wrong. So there is different kind of anxiety. In fact, in 2.6, just before Arjuna surrenders, that's also a very interesting verse, because that shows the indecision of Arjuna. I'm sorry. So there it is said, nor do we know which is better, conquering them or being conquered by them. The sons of Dhritarashtra, whom if we kill, we should not care to live, are now standing before us on this battlefield. So, nor do we know which is better. So, how do we decide which is better action to do, which is not better action to do? Conquering them or being conquered by them? So how do we understand? So this perplexity, this anxiety, this difficulty, every living entity is undergoing. So in spite of having any material qualification, one still undergoes this indecision, difficulty in taking decisions in all spheres of life until unless one is not educated in the science of Bhagavad Gita. So Arjuna was also undergoing similar kind of difficulty as choosing between fighting or not fighting, and an anxiety of what will happen if I conquer. Everyone will die. How will I enjoy? If I die, is it sinful? So there are various kinds of indecision. Now, usually, how do we deal when there is an indecision? Usually, people deal in three ways. People use one's own intelligence to solve a problem. So based upon what one knows, one thinks, oh, this is what I like, this is what I think is appropriate, and therefore I whimsically act based upon my interest and my likings and my ability of understanding things. What is right and wrong is beyond. For me, what appears to be right and what appears to be good is the criteria of judgment. But this comes with flaw. And we have seen again and again in our life that by using our limited intelligence, we end up in another problem from the problem where we started. And therefore, in this material world, people are always perplexed, continuously, because most often people use only their limited intelligence, faulty and limited. The second way people try to acquire or make a decision is by doing an election process, so-called democratic process. The majority wins. So people call, okay, come 10 people, what is your opinion? And give a vote in the parliament. So we will go to war or we will not go to war, or some other thing. So people try to get in this way a certain decision. But even this is flawed, because if the people are not appropriate, if people are not well educated, well trained. So for example, just to give a simple example, recently I came across an article which said that when 9/11 happened, that is the bombing of WTC, or the planes hitting WTC, and 3 days later, the US government agreed that you could go on for a war killing terrorists. So except one member of the government, or Senate you can call, she didn't agree for this. So she said, who is your real target? What is the plan to come back if we fail in doing this? So she asked some questions. So people neglected, oh, this is only one minority, rest all agreed. So they said, doesn't matter what money costs, what happens, let's go and kill first. After that, we will see whatever will happen. So today, it seems they're looking at the questions that she asked. We have been there in Afghanistan for 19 years, but still terrorism still prevails. Still, the terrorism has not gone away. So did we really conquer what we went to conquer for? So the point here is, sometimes even the so-called majority, and Prabhupada criticizes the democratic system in multiple places, but the point here being so-called majoritism is also not sufficient enough to claim that the decision is right. Then if these two methods of limited knowledge and the method of democratic process of majority doesn't help one to make an absolute decision, then how do one make decision? So the other way to make decision, the third way, is to consult others. Now, when we consult others, there is a problem that we see first. What is the problem that we see? When we consult others, there is a fear of being judged. There is a fear, oh, your idea is so small, people may neglect. People may say, oh, you're trying to do something else. Or it is possible that because you're consulting, that person with limited knowledge can also give faulty instructions. And therefore, you're fearful of that person's opinion. Or it is possible that the person may influence in a way that is favorable for that person. So even when you consult others, there is a danger. Is he influencing for his own personal gain? Is he doing it for a genuine intention? Does he have enough knowledge? Is he misguiding? So there are various aspects that can come up even when we consult others. And therefore, sometimes we do not even consult others. So this is how a common man in the mundane world is stuck in so many difficulties. And therefore, sometimes one goes to look at some motivational book, sometimes to some other TED talk, some other time to something else. And therefore, today you can see, especially in Kali Yuga, there are cheaters and cheated. You will see if you type something on Bhagavad Gita in YouTube, you will see some motivational speaker to be on the front. Because people like to consult these people, but not the real person whom one should consult. So the point that is important to note here is that if these three methods fail, what else is the option left? Limited intelligence of individual, democratic process of saying yes, and consulting others is failing. Then what else can be done? So the answer to this question lies in consulting an authority, consulting an expert, consulting an expert who is unflawed, who is infallible, whose opinion, whose knowledge is the light which gives a solution. So in the normal material world, we go towards a doctor because we do not know how to cure our own disease. And therefore, we look for a doctor who can give us guidance. But in today's world, because there's so much of cheating tendency, we want second opinion, third opinion, so that we can be assured that, okay, this person, whatever he's saying is right. He's not trying to bluff or cheat. So the point here is that we need consultancy because we are in difficulty. Because of our inability, we cannot make perfect decision. We cannot act perfectly. And because we cannot do these things, we need to consult. Just like we cannot solve our bodily disease if we have any, we need an expert. Similarly, we are in a struggle of our existence. There is a struggle for existence. So a man of finer intellect can see that there is a perpetual struggle of existence that I'm undergoing. And I do not want to be in that state of existential struggle. And in spite of my endeavors, I'm not able to overcome it. Neither by a group of society of friends, I am able to overcome it. Neither by consulting some politician, some physician, I can overcome this problem. Just like if there is a problem of eye, if you go to some other doctor who is not specialist in eye, he may not be able to guide you. So similarly, here is the same question that Arjuna is asking. How do I make a decision? How do I overcome this difficulty that I'm undergoing right now? So the way Arjuna dealt is very, very instructive. In fact, Prabhupada states in various places that Bhagavad Gita was spoken to Arjuna so that it is actually meant for all of us. So Arjuna is just an instrument for us to be educated. So it is important for us to follow the actions taken by Arjuna. So Arjuna decides, first after all his assessment of what is possible, what is not possible, what is right and what is wrong, he tries to make an assessment of all the situations and all the possible situations that can appear and the possible outcomes that can come. And therefore, we can see in the first chapter the various arguments put forward by Arjuna. But still, like a conditioned soul, so Arjuna is just put under illusion here, and therefore he asks further questions and he uses a certain kind of reasoning here. So similarly, the conditioned soul who is limited cannot overcome or cannot make a conclusive absolute decision. And therefore, Arjuna eventually in 2.7 surrenders unto the Supreme Lord. So he makes Karpanya doshopata subhavaha prichhami tvam dharma sammuda chetaha. So dharma sammuda chetaha. So this understanding this dharma, what is what? Who am I? What is my duty? This knowledge for a conditioned soul is not possible to acquire by any other means apart from the means given in the Vedic literatures. To come towards a conclusive understanding of dharma is not possible. So, yat shreyashyan nishitam bruhitan me. Please tell me what is ultimately good for me. Because the saddest part is the living entity in the illusory state thinks he knows what is good for oneself. But actually, the living entity is creating another cycle of bondage, another cycle of entanglement by one's own desires and actions. So one must become aware that I am actually ignorant. Actually, I'm not conclusive in understanding what is to be done, what is good, what is right. And therefore, Shishyasteham Shadimam Tvam Prapannam. So Prabhupada writes here, so Arjuna also was in difficulty in having to fight the battle of Kurukshetra. Arjuna surrendered unto Sri Krishna, and consequently the Bhagavad Gita was spoken. So unless there is certain aspect of eagerness to understand, willingness to give up our speculative, our fruitive tendency and listen to what is actually good for us, we cannot hear the message. So here further Prabhupada is saying, not only Arjuna, but every one of us is full of anxieties because of this material existence. Our very existence is an atmosphere of non-existence. So Prabhupada is bringing in a very important fundamental point that where is the anxiety coming from? So just like a man who is supposed to live on land, if he is in the ocean, there will be always a chance of anxiety because that is not natural. To be in water, there is always danger. To be in plane, there is always danger. So, but the question must come, why did I end up here? Why didn't I go to my real place? So a man of intelligence begins his inquiry. And as we'll see, Prabhupada explains further down that this is called Brahma Jignasa, Athato Brahma Jignasa, to inquire, where did I end up here? Why am I suffering? Why am I coming always under anxiety? What am I achieving through all these actions that I'm doing? And so this understanding and this questioning is so important for one to become receptive to appreciate the message of Bhagavad Gita. So therefore, sometimes people think I can decide on my own. I can tweak in some things from some opinion. And Prabhupada was very clear throughout that there is no source better than the word words of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. And therefore, Prabhupada defended in all places that how can you say this is impersonal? How can you teach that way? So, Imam Vivasvate Yogam Proktavan Aham Avyayam. So, Prabhupada says, Aham is being mentioned, I. So, how can you say he is not there? How can you say this body, Kurukshetra, is not the real place? It is something like your body. Why this kind of interpretation? So, Prabhupada was very strict in making sure that this is authoritative knowledge. If one consults the supreme authority who is all perfect, and if one becomes receptive and hears this knowledge, then all existential problems get vanished. As we saw in Gita Mahatmya, there is no assurance. In fact, Prabhupada explains this is a perfect theistic science. Perfect theistic science. Prabhupada in other places says this is perfect cultural presentation, and Prabhupada adds a few more words to describe as how Bhagavad Gita is the perfect both religious, cultural, spiritual, and it is scientific. So it is devotional. It is, and also it is very important for us to recognize that how Srila Prabhupada has presented this. So as we are doing book distribution, maybe for a couple of minutes, I'll just speak about Prabhupada's presentation. So Prabhupada in the preface explains that initially the book was shortened. But Prabhupada says, I wanted these books like other books that Prabhupada has written, that there is the Sanskrit verse, the original Sanskrit text, and then there is Roman transliteration, then there is word-to-word meaning. So Prabhupada says, word-to-word Sanskrit English equivalence. So Prabhupada doesn't say meaning, Prabhupada says equivalence. Now this is a very important point to note. Why Prabhupada used equivalence? Because it is quite possible that when you literally translate sometimes, it may not give you the meaning because the word can have multiple connotations. So to exactly bring those things into English requires someone who knows the essence, the meaning behind the words. Otherwise, it is quite possible in Sanskrit language to English translation that if one simply goes literally and not get to the meaning behind it, one can also lose the meaning of the speaker. So Prabhupada mentions word to word, word for word Sanskrit English equivalence. And then Prabhupada says translation and purpose. So Prabhupada says this is the way Prabhupada has chosen to make the text available in English so that the meaning is self-evident. The meaning is self-evident. So the words are explained. There is an explanation of those words in the form of translation, and then a further explanation of the translation. So there is a very scholarly, there is a very systematic presentation so that any individual can appreciate the authenticity of the text, the authenticity of the message. So as we go for book distribution, we can emphasize that this is so wonderfully presented. This is knowledge for everyone. This is not limited by any caste, creed, nationality. Indecision, anxiety, fear is common to everyone. And no one can overcome this without this great theistic science, this knowledge provided by the Supreme Lord himself. In fact, there is no other text which is directly spoken by the Lord. And therefore, Prabhupada says, this contains everything. In fact, things which are not even contained in other scriptures. So, in that sense, Bhagavad Gita is so wonderful. And even the introduction of Bhagavad Gita, as presented by Prabhupada, is very beautiful. It can inspire anyone of any faith, of any culture, to appreciate the Sanatana Dharma, the Krishna consciousness movement, the teachings of Lord Krishna in a very systematic and scientific way. So this is a wonderful month of Gita Jayanti. We all can read, discuss. Discussion is another very important aspect. So as we share, we discuss, we also appreciate further aspects of the knowledge. So we should all take determination to spend more time this whole month and read Bhagavad Gita and also share this knowledge with others. If there are any questions or comments, we'll ask.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, actually, Prabhupada has explained that our soul is in sleeping state, sleeping mode always. But here actually one place he is saying that soul is always active. So how could we understand this?
Can you state your first part of the question again?
Prabhupada is saying that our soul is in sleeping state, and so we have to revive our original consciousness by the chanting of the holy name. Mm-hmm. and in the same, like in some of the places he's saying that our soul is always in active state, because due to that activeness only we can do our like all these general works. So how do we understand this?
Okay, so basically when Prabhupada is saying soul is active, that means even in the state of conditioned life, if the soul is not active, the body cannot function. So it's because of the presence of the soul that the body is moving, the body was active. So that energy, that the soul is active, and therefore the body is also active. And similarly, when the soul is liberated, it is also active, it is performing action. So now when in the sleeping state, what it means is that one is not performing the real activities of the living entity. Just like when one is sleeping, one is less active, he's completely, so when he's sleeping, there is some sort of activity, but not the real activity that one can do. So similarly, in the sleeping state, the soul, what it means is that it is not performing its real activities. So living entity, being a part and parcel of Supreme Lord Shri Krishna, the natural constitutional portion of the living entity is to serve the Lord. So when the living entity is not performing that activity of serving the Lord, one is not an active in its truest sense of activity. So in that sense, the living entity is doing something else in the illusory world, in the illusory thinking, willing, feeling. So in that sense, the living entity is sleeping from its real activity. But on the other hand, in some way or the other, the living entity is always serving, either serving the illusory energy of the Lord or the Lord directly. So when the living entity is serving the illusory energy of the Lord, it is sleeping from its real activity where it is supposed to serve the Lord directly. Does it help? Any other questions or comments? Okay. There are no questions or comments. For those who did not join us in the morning, the Gita Srila Prabhupada book marathon was started today, and we are distributing, sending books to those devotees who are willing to share it with others and distribute. So please do reach out to Badrinaran Prabhu if you have any further questions in this regard. It's a very transcendental activity to honestly make an attempt. We all understand that there are certain constraints in terms of the COVID restrictions, but still, as Amitabh Singh Prabhu was saying, where there is a will, there is a way. So in whatever best possible way we could make an attempt to distribute these literatures, that will be a great service. and will be very helpful for in our advancement of devotional life. So please do take advantage of this, and we'll keep you posted about our further programs.
Prabhuji, I have a question.
Yes,
Sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
So, initially you mentioned that if we read Bhagavad Gita, then we can overcome our past misdeeds. So, does that mean like past misdeeds in this lifetime, or like other lifetimes which we have already lived?
All the lifetimes. So if one
All the
surrenders to Krishna and follows the instructions, then Krishna personally protects. To the degree we surrender, to that extent Krishna protects. Ye yathamam prapadyante tam tataiva pachamiham. So, but on the other hand, if one surrenders completely, one completely takes shelter of Supreme Lord, Sarvadharman Prityaja Mamekam Sharanam Braja, Aham Tvam Sarvapapebhyo Mokshashyami Masuchaha. So Krishna gives full assurance that do not worry. If you take full shelter of Krishna, Krishna takes care of all activities of all lives and reactions to them.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Is there any, Ankita Mataji, do you have the book with you, Bhagavad Gita?
Yes, I have the book with me.
Okay, good. Okay, if there are no comments or no questions, I request everyone to come in front of the camera. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Srila Prabhupada ki,
Jai,
Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki,
Jai,
Nitai Gaur Premanande.
Hare Hare Bol.
Thank you all for joining. Hare Krishna.